it had taken the congregation, the search committee, I should say, 2 years plus in the search process, and the end of it was slowed down because when the candidates came to Chicago, they were to meet not only with the search committee but with the wardens. And just as we were about to bring the candidates in, it turned out that the senior warden and his wife were going to be away for 3 weeks in Hong Kong. So this got delayed, and then time for the final vote was just before Christmas, and we couldn't do that till after New Year's. But this had a rather nice side benefit in that the announcement of our new rector was made at the service on the second Sunday of January 1993, just 100 years after the official founding date of the parish. And they had scheduled Bishop Griswold to come for an afternoon, evening, special evensong service that day, and they had a reception in the guild room, and there was information available on some of the items in the church, like the lectern and the font and so on. Ray Webster came from St. Peter's Church in Osterville, Massachusetts, and he had served, all the parishes he had served had been in the East, and his former rector, who had become a bishop, had recommended Ray for the job. He could not immediately come. He thought he should stay at his former parish through the Easter season, but in May he arrived. His first Sunday as rector was the 9th of May, and he did make one visit during the interim period and met many of the congregation so that they knew him a little bit before he officially started. The search committee scheduled a lot of small group dinners and brunches so the congregation and the new rector and his wife could meet. And at this time, to benefit the music program, we always would have a special dinner, and Richard Hoskins would plan this, and there would usually be a theme, and then members of the choir would sing. And the year that Ray came, it was 1893 to 1993, and not only the parish's 100th anniversary, but the 100th anniversary of the 1893 World's Fair. So 1893 was taken as the theme, and at the end of the evening, Ray handed out words he had written adapting "Hello, Dolly," and it was, "Hello, Raymond, we're so nice to have you. It's so nice to have you here where you belong. Ray, we hope you stay forever and a day." Ray's wife, Eve, was the most active participant in congregational and church activities, I think, of any clergy spouse. She was on the planning committee for the adult forum, and she was a lector. And at the one of the search committee meetings when the Websters had come, she particularly asked what the expectations were about a rector's wife, because she said, "If you want me to do altar guild, I don't like that and I'm not good at it, but there are other things that I would like to do." And it was not only the adult forum, but she enjoyed hosting groups at the rectory, and there would be meetings or special events for small groups there. And she also got on the St. Leonard's House board. I think she was the vice president. She was very active in that, and because of her interest, I think many people were encouraged to take part in some St. Leonard's activities. They used to do a benefit walk in the west side area near St. Leonard's, and there would always be people from church who would take you there if you had signed up to do the walk. When Ray came, he said that he was not going to make any major changes in the service for at least a year. He wanted to see how things were, it worked the way we had been doing, not immediately step in and say we're going to do this differently. One thing, however, I think he didn't wait on starting for a whole year was that he was very interested in having adult education programs on Sunday mornings between the services. And this began, I think, the fall after he arrived. And it was very much of a change because Bob Howell had not regularly, there were some special programs that he would put on, and some of the assistants or associates would sometimes schedule sessions, but for the most part we hadn't done much on this, so it was interesting that this was very well received by the congregation, and the programs were very well attended. And as I say, Eve Webster was very active on the planning group for this committee. She was a teacher at a Catholic high school in River Forest, and somebody she knew through that context was Muslim, and he came and spoke a couple of times to the adult forum. By 1994, when Ash Wednesday came, Ray had been there almost a year, and for the first time we started doing the imposition of ashes. It was not required, but he did do it, and no one objected, which would certainly not have been the case when I was growing up in the parish. The survey of the congregation that people had to fill out during the search process had indicated a strong preference to continue morning prayer on the second and fourth Sunday, and we did do that. Not often do you have 5 Sundays in a month, but it's kind of interesting that when we started doing the Eucharist more than once a month, it was specified that this was the first and third Sunday, the assumption being that the other services would be morning prayer. And by the time Ray came, the assumption what seems to have changed, and that if you didn't say it was going to be morning prayer, it was going to be the Eucharist, so we started having the Eucharist on the 5th Sunday of the month. After about 2 years, Ray spoke to the vestry and said that he thought we needed either to change the 11 o'clock service to make it more child-friendly, or to begin an additional Sunday service, specially geared to children and families. And the strong preference was for doing that and leaving the 11 o'clock service much as it had been. And this has been a very good decision, because I think now we probably get more people at the 9 o'clock than we do at the 11. And this led to an addition to the church's music staff, because when this started up and the new service was begun, Richard said, well, he could not play at that service because that was the time when the choir rehearsed for 11 o'clock. So Roger Stanley was added to the staff and has been here ever since. In, I think, 1997, Ray decided that he wanted to use a holy table instead of consecrating the elements at the high altar. There had been a death of one of the very active members of the congregation, and he said that he felt that he wanted to be facing the people, that he didn't want to have them at the back, but he wanted to be looking at them. And we moved a table from someplace in the parish house and used that. We did not have people receive at the holy table, but we did have them, they came up to the high altar after the consecration. And at some time after that, we have a parishioner in the congregation who was at that time a custom furniture manufacturer, and he offered to design and make a holy table, which he did and which we are still using. By this time, the women of St. Chrysostom's did not meet weekly, and there had been, for ever since the late 1920s, a Eucharist on the day of the week when the women met, which was usually Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And this had been going on, but because the group wasn't meeting regularly on Tuesdays, a lot of times there was nobody in attendance, and it seemed as though not a good idea to continue this service. But there was the feeling that we didn't want to eliminate a service of the Eucharist, that we would rather find a different time for it. And what happened was that we introduced a 5:15 service. Other new things that happened during this period were that we started doing foot washing at the Maundy Thursday service, which I think was probably about 1995 or 6. And for several years, beginning in the mid-90s, after Maundy Thursday, we would move, the consecrated elements would be moved into the Crane Chapel, and the church would be kept open with security staff on duty. And you signed up and you would do a 2-hour vigil by the consecrated elements, and then the Good Friday liturgy would be celebrated at 7:30. This went on for 5 or 6 years, but was given up when we had difficulty getting security staff to be on duty, and it wasn't considered a good idea to have people in the church at night without any anybody looking out. We continued with the tutoring program that had started in the Howell years, but it was getting so that other groups were also being involved. And for a while we worked jointly, I think, with the LaSalle Street Church. But it got to be that we were no longer really needed in that ministry, but a new avenue of outreach had opened up. One of the members of the vestry during Ray's first years had a son who had to do community service in his high school and was assigned to Deborah's Place Women's Shelter. And his mother was very much impressed with the work that the shelter was doing and spoke about it to the vestry. And what happened was that the parish agreed to cook a meal once a month and send it over to the shelter. And for most of the first years that this program was going on, Noma Cave was its director. She had come to St. Chrysostom's for the first time when the Sunday that Bob Howell had introduced fish, and she was very eager to take part in this kind of activity, and so signed up for it. You could volunteer not only to cook, but there was one couple who regularly did the shopping for the meal. And at that time, we cooked on Thursday evening, and the meal was put in the refrigerator, and the next day another volunteer from the parish would pick it up and would drive it over to the Sedgwick Street site of Deborah's Place. And times have changed over the years. We moved it from evening to afternoon because it was hard for people to get into the church. No one was on duty that evening to let them in, and so we switched it to the afternoon, and then later changed it to the morning, and instead of it being made for the next day, it's now cooked and taken over for that evening. Ray was not actively, regularly involved in the church school activities, but he did like to keep in some contact with them, and teachers' meetings were regularly scheduled at the rectory. And one thing that he did, which I think we all kind of enjoyed, was that he would write the Christmas pageant for the Sunday school. And I particularly remember one that he wrote in which the narrator was one of the camels that the wise men had ridden on. And we had moved the time of the Sunday school to between the 9 and the 11 o'clock services. It has been at various times over the years, and I can't remember whether it was at 11 when he moved it or at 9, but it was done between the services. And every year when the Christmas pageant was going on, the two services would be combined. I mentioned the music benefit that we had had. This had been going on for some years, but in 1994, a change was made, and instead of having a dinner and program, we started the candlelight carols, which was early evening on a Friday evening somewhere between Thanksgiving and Christmas. first announcement of it, it was to be in the Harding room, and it said, "Please join us in Harding Hall." And they got a bagpiper who would lead in the singers and the musicians, and we have had over the years several people in the congregation who play various instruments, and they would take part. And the choir, of course, would sing. Usually the youth group would take some part, and I think what they have done, certainly in recent years, is that they take turns reading "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." And there would be other readings by the people in the congregation. We have a parishioner who always reads the Christmas dinner passage out of Christmas Carol. And the Boar's Head Carol is always sung, and we acquired a boar's head from some church in the north suburbs. I can't remember which one now, and that is brought in and everybody sings, and the 12 days of Christmas are sung, and each person is given a number, and when they go, if your number is 3, you jump up and sing when they sing 3 French hens, and so on. And that is, with cost for that is not nearly what you paid for the music benefit, but it attracted so many people that it has been a much better fundraiser. And in recent years, we started having 2 services, and one earlier for very small children, and the one at 7:30 in the evening for older children and adults. The first associate that Ray got at St. Chrysostom's was also from the Diocese of Massachusetts, and was a man of about his own age, the Reverend Stephen Wade. I think he had been associate or acting rector at a parish, and when the new rector came, he was not needed and was looking for something, and I don't think he ever intended to stay a long time, but he was here maybe a year and a half, and accepted a call to become rector of a parish in Virginia. And when looking for a new rector, we ended up having our first woman priest on the staff, and I remember Ray speaking to the congregation about this, and he had said when he came that he was did not want to be get up on the soapbox about various issues, and he wanted people to feel that the church had space for differing views, but he said, "You should know that I am in favor of ordaining women," and he particularly spoke to the congregation before the first woman priest arrived, and she was the Reverend Amy Richter, had an interesting background because her parents were Missouri Synod Lutherans, and her father was a minister in that denomination. And they had taken it quite well that she wanted to leave the faith she'd been brought up with and become an Episcopalian, because they knew she felt she had a vocation to the ordained ministry, and the Missouri Synod Lutherans did not ordain women. And her father was at a church in Milwaukee, and at least once the parents came down for the candlelight carols service on a Friday evening. The congregation really was impressed with her, and I remember hearing one woman who had was not in favor in general of the ordination of women, and she said, well, she didn't liked the idea of women priests, but Amy was different. And she had been in the Diocese of Pennsylvania, but her husband, Joe Pagano, was taking a PhD program at Marquette. And so she wanted to relocate somewhere that would be nearer to his studies. And he took part in, sometimes would give adult forum programs and was quite active. And we liked both of them a great deal. Amy was very interested in the issue of clergy wellness. And as a so to show how she thought this was important, she would regularly run in the Chicago Marathon. And her mother died a year or so before Amy left St. Chrysostom's, and she asked the congregation to make memorials to her by signing up as a sponsor of her run. You could do this, I suppose you still can, on behalf of various charitable groups, and she asked us all to sign up and pledge for the American Cancer Society in her mother's memory, which many people did. She was called to become rector of a parish in Milwaukee, and thought she should accept this call because her father was in the area and she would see him, and her husband was, I think, still going on with his program at Marquette. And we were very sorry to lose her, but were immediately able to get a replacement. She was not going to stay long, but the Reverend D. Maria Neighbors, who had been at the cathedral, was Ray got her to come for the last few months before her retirement. And she was the first African American priest to serve in the congregation, and was also very well liked. And throughout the rest of Ray's tenure, we had women as priests on the staff. For about 2 years, we had a clergy couple, Mark and Abigail Nesselhut, and she gave birth to the couple's son, Asa, in about halfway through the time they were in the parish, and she went on, I think, half or three-quarter time status after that. Lots of groups in the parish had showers and other events for gifts for the baby. And when they left to go to a church in the eastern shore of Maryland, the Reverend Terry Tilley, who was older, probably 50s at the time she came, late 40s, came and was there until she was called to one of the west suburban parishes in 2008. And her successor was the Reverend Danielle Thompson, who also came to the area because her husband was in a PhD program, his at Champaign-Urbana. We had had the house Eucharists in the 70s and 80s, but they had kind of dropped off the calendar in the late 80s, and there was a feeling that people would like to have some kind of a similar program and perhaps reinstate the House Eucharists. Ray was a little concerned that perhaps people might not want to have their home open to people that they didn't know, and that it might be better to have something where you didn't just guess what the food was going to be. And the first Sunday night suppers were started. On the first Sunday of the month, the hosts would prepare a main dish, and then you could bring appetizer, salad, dessert, wine, whatever, or you paid an admission fee. And these, as with the House Eucharists, were extremely popular, and what was particularly well liked was in the summer when you'd have something for a main dish that you'd cook out in the courtyard, and then you'd sit and eat your meal out there. And I remember first one of these that we had, one of the women sitting across the table from me said, "Oh, this is wonderful. It's just like being in an Oxford college, but you get to go home and sleep in your own bed." The unfortunate thing that happened was that one couple pretty much took responsibility for all the dinners, and there wasn't a committee or anything. And when they moved out of the area to the West Coast in about 2000, then they pretty well dropped off the schedule. One thing that happened when Amy Richter was our associate was that she began the EFM Education for Ministry program in the congregation, and you could sign up. And this is a 4-year program. In the first year discussing the Old Testament, second year the New Testament, third year classics of theology and spirituality, fourth year current trends. And Amy started this, and several people became interested, and the group, I think, began, probably 1997, because I think it was 2001 now that group finished off. But when she left, fortunately, we had added a parish administrator, Alice Brown, to the staff at St. Chrysostom's, and she was certified as an EFM instructor, and she kept the program going, and I was in that for the 2 years. And then you have to have, I think, 6 people enrolled, and after I had completed, I think 3 of us had started, were halfway through, and then the second group had started the year after we did, but some of them dropped out, and there weren't enough people to get to the 6 maximum, and so we had to give it up. I think you could go on, I think it may have been even at Redeemer, it was someplace on the south side anyway, that was doing the program, and I remember talking about it with another of the group, and we just said no, that was really a little too far for us to go to on a weeknight, so we did not continue it. One thing that was very good in the Webster years was that we had a very good program for welcoming newcomers. There would be special events for them probably 2-3 times a year. And sometimes it would be a reception at the rectory. At least once everybody was encouraged to come to a concert at Grant Park and bring food and sit out on the lawn and listen to it. And it was not only newcomers, but they would, people who had been in the congregation for a while were invited too, so you'd get to meet the people. And I always enjoyed these, and I was impressed that often when I would come to these meetings, I would already know 1 or 2 of the people who were there because they had stepped right in and had immediately joined organizations that I had some contact with. And another thing we did that was the idea of a woman on the vestry was a program that was called shepherding. And new people would be hooked up with a person who shared some of their interests, and this person would be with them and would take them to meetings of groups that they were interested in. And this was so successful that I remember I was a delegate to diocesan convention at the time this program was going on, and someone from another parish had heard about it and wanted to hear more, and I told the person what I knew and gave the name of the woman to contact. And unfortunately, this when she left the congregation, the program kind of petered out, which was too bad. Ray was interested in having ties with some of the other churches and religious bodies in the area. And a member of the congregation had given money to sponsor a lecture at St. Chrysostom's. And the first year that this was done, Cardinal Bernardine was invited to speak. And I was away at the time, didn't hear him, but I heard very, very good comments on his talk. And woman who lived in the area was walking to her home, and the Cardinal was leaving at the same time and said he would walk with her, and he went a little bit out of his way to take her to her place on Lakeshore Drive before he came home himself. Cardinal George was later invited to speak, and I did hear him, and he was very interesting because it was just after Pope Benedict had been elected, and he had comments on the election and how people really had prayed together before taking the vote, and that he really did feel that it was that they were waiting and hoping to be led by the Lord. We would have, as we had done for so many years, regular weekly Lenten programs with speakers. And there were 2 clergy who very often took part in this. And one was the Lutheran theologian, the Reverend Martin Marty, and he has been every now and then to services at St. Chrysostom's. And the other was Rabbi Schallman. I don't remember what Jewish congregation he belonged to, but he was the speaker several times. In the late 90s, we had a couple of programs going for small groups. You didn't have to sign up, but you were encouraged to. And there were covenant groups where 6, 8, 10 people would meet and would read and discuss a book together. And sometimes this could work out very well. I remember the first one that I was in, there were probably about 6 of us, and we were reading a book by a Greek Orthodox theologian and had some really good discussions. And the other thing, which started a little bit later, was called foyer groups. And these were less formal. You didn't have any meeting topic, but you'd have maybe 10, 12 people from all the different congregations. And you'd meet once a month for dinner or brunch, just to get to know people outside from other services, or people that you hadn't had a chance to talk to much. And the idea with these was that they weren't going to be a permanent part of the community activities, but you would do them for 2 or 3 years and then put them aside and then perhaps resume them at a later date. In the late 90s began another capital campaign. I think now one can assume, with the age of this building, that probably during every rector's tenure there will be some kind of capital campaign going on. And the big centerpiece of this campaign was replacing the organ. Bob Lodine had died about 2 years after he stepped down as organist at St. Chrysostom's, and this was probably fortunate for him that he did not live to see what happened to the organ that he had been so proud of and that he had pushed so hard to get, because Mahler, the manufacturer of the organ, had used new types of material that had not been tested, and it turned out that these did not at all well stand up to the test of time. And not only St. Chrysostom's, but many other Mahler organs met this same fate. The Chicago Symphony Orchestra, after people had heard concerts on the St. Chrysostom's organ, went for a Mahler organ themselves, and as at St. Chrysostom's and as at many other places, the organ did not stand the test of time. They were using new experimental materials which did not work out. And at the time after we had placed our order for a new organ and before it had been installed, I was on a tour of southern Africa, and one of the people in the group was a retired church organist, and we were at dinner one time, and to make conversation, I said something about we were going to be getting a new organ, a Fisk, and he said, "Oh, that would be very good." And then he said, "What kind of organ did you have before?" And I said, "A Mahler," and he just groaned. There was quite a bit of study done before going for the Fisk, but that choice did seem good to everyone. But it raised an issue of where to put the new organ. We had always had the organ in the chancel, and the area at the head of the north aisle, where the Brooker Chapel is now, was blocked off and housed many of the pipes. The Fisk organ was going to jut out more into the chancel if it was placed there, and Another choice was to move the high altar forward and to put the organ where it had stood. Now, I was clerk of the vestry at that time and was present for the discussions on this, and I couldn't vote, but I could speak up, and I thought that many of the vestry were over-optimistic in saying, well, people would be disturbed by this at first, but it would wear off and they would think it was all right. And I know that a number of the people, including myself, felt that it gave a very bad impression if you're moving the high altar and saying that an organ with music is more important than celebrating the sacrament at the altar. And there was a third option that I think was never seriously considered, but that was brought up, and that was that you turn the whole church around and you move the altar to the back of the church in front of the window. And this, I think, was probably just raised so that people would think that the putting it where the high altar is was a better choice. But there were a lot of congregational meetings on the issue, and one member of the vestry had a real brainstorm, and I think perhaps the Holy Spirit can be said to have been at work, and suggested that instead of moving the church to the back, facing the window, why not install the organ there at the rear of the church, and the choir could be located under the window. And they got various people to come in and discuss this, and the sound quality would be as good or better, and it was not going to cost any more. And when this was raised before the congregation, everyone was very happy, and not only because they liked the idea, but there had been some feeling that having congregational meetings to discuss this, that it was a foregone conclusion, and that whatever people said, that the organ would be put where the altar was. And to discover that this was not the case, and that the voice of the congregation had been heard, was a very good thing. It took a while to get the organ produced, but by early fall 2003, the pipes were ready to be brought in, and Fisk always asked that when this happened, that you have people from the congregation who would be available and could come and help unload them. And I was away at this time and couldn't take part, but a good number of people did, and the pipes were taken off and moved into the church. And then by February 2004, the organ was installed, and it was dedicated, and a organist from some church in Paris gave the first concert on it a few days later. And one of the other things that happened during this capital campaign was that the present washroom was installed in the Harding room. And this is not certainly so dramatic as the organ, but it is the first time that there had been a public washroom on the first floor of the parish house, and that you didn't have to go up to the second floor or down to the basement. One issue that came up in the early 2000s, it was at, I think it was 2003 that a openly gay man was elected a bishop, and this caused a great deal of controversy in many quarters. And I am told that after the election the first day after the election became known, that the parish office had turned in some the checks that had recently come in, people making payment on their pledges, and one couple they discovered had immediately stopped payment on the check when they heard about the election of Bishop Robinson. There was another man in the congregation, and he was very, very active. He was a lecturer, he was a lay Eucharistic minister, and he never had spoken much about his views on these issues, but he was so horrified that he put up on all the stores in the neighborhood that had bulletin boards with announcements of neighborhood activity. He put notes up. Bishop Purcell was going to make his visitation to St. Chrysostom's shortly after this had happened, and he put these notes up asking people to come and protest. And we were wondering what was going to happen at this service, and it all went off smoothly, but he ended up breaking away, starting his own congregation, and he sent these very unpleasant emails and telephone messages, and fortunately, he did not have my email, but he did have my phone number, and I got these 2 phone messages just before the Bishop Purcell was to make his visitation, and the one was in his normal voice and saying, "Please don't come, please protest." And then the second one, he puts on this very effeminate sounding voice like he thinks gay men are supposed to sound like, and is saying, "Oh no, please come, please come, please come, and show how much we support this." And it was apparently the emails were extremely obnoxious too, and he called me and asked me if I would be interested in joining his congregation, and I was very polite and didn't say what I thought, and I said, "Well, no, my ties to St. Chrysostom's were so went back so many years I wasn't going to break them," and that I said something about, well, it's always good when there's new opportunities, new people perhaps will be able to hear the word of God. And looking back, I think perhaps I should have been not quite so polite. For the most part, except for these, the whole congregation accepted this. We had, for a good number of years, had gay couples actively participating in the congregation. And one couple, when they had AIDS Awareness Sunday, would always give flowers for the altar in honor of people that they knew who had died of AIDS. Going back a little bit to 1999, George Carey was the Archbishop of Canterbury, and he was coming to the United States in the summer to a conference at Notre Dame, and was going to be in Chicago for the weekend after the conference ended. And a lay member of his staff had lived in Chicago for many years, and he advised the archbishop, who was generally rather low church. I don't know if the archbishop asked him or if this man just suggested it on his own, that he said, church you might enjoy attending. I think the archbishop didn't want to go to the cathedral. I think he wanted it to be more informal. And this man said, well, you should go to St. Chrysostom's Church. It's quite near downtown, and it's a low church tradition. And he came, he and his wife, just as parishioners in the pew, and did not take part in the service, but was asked and was willing to give the blessing at the end of the service. So the next year, Ray wrote to the archbishop and formally invited him to come and to preach and to celebrate. And this did happen. It was August the 6th, 2000, and was the anniversary of the Hiroshima atomic bomb, and was also the Feast of the Transfiguration. And the archbishop preached a very good sermon on these two events. I was a lay Eucharistic minister at that service, and I remember just holding my breath that the wine was going to hold out, because, of course, the congregation was packed. And it was the first Sunday of the month, so there was a first Sunday night supper. And it turned out that the archbishop could be called a chocoholic, because somebody had brought chocolate chip cookies made with about 3 times the usual number of chocolate chips, and he just loved those. And he had never had brownies before, and he was sampling them, and what are those called? And he was so interested. And they just had a very nice time. The year after Archbishop Carey was at our service and preached and celebrated, the Websters were coming to England, and he invited them to a garden party at Lambeth Palace, to which the Queen and Prince Philip were also invited. And Ray came back and mentioned about having this conversation with Prince Philip. It was a terrible rainy day, and Prince Philip was making conversations about Noah's Ark. And perhaps as a spin-off of that, though I'm not sure, the youth group in 2006 made a week's trip to England, and the Websters, I think, did not officially accompany the group, but they were there at the time and joined in some of the activities. The women at this time, as I noted earlier, were no longer meeting weekly, and they would, a lot of their programs at this time were trips to various sites of interest in the Chicago area. Once we went out to Ragdale and Lake Forest, the Howard Van Doren Shaw home, and had a very interesting visit. And I was, I think, still working when they went to the Chicago Botanic Garden. And there were women in the parish worked at an art gallery, and we had an evening there. And what we did in the early 2000s was very nice for the Christmas meeting, was that we would collect travel-size small items and put them in bags to be given to the women at the primo women's and children's center, and it used to be very nice. You'd come in and these items would be all laid out on tables, and each person would take a bag, and you'd take one of everything that was there and fill it up, and it really did see you really did feel like this was a good thing to be doing. And the parish, too, I think probably it had been done before, but Ray particularly encouraged it, and Wes has kept on with this, signing up for the Revive Christmas Basket program. And I think we get probably close to 100 people who sign up every year, and you come in and bring your items on the Saturday or the Sunday that they do the collection, and the gym is just full of boxes, and it is really great to see. A new activity that had never been part of the parish program before began in the about 2008. Ray and Eve Webster and Judy and John Bross from the congregation were, both couples were in Mexico, and they went to see Bishop Benito from the Diocese of Southeast Mexico, which is our companion diocese. Ray had taken Spanish at the Cervantes Institute and had been given a sabbatical 7 years after he had arrived, and had spent time in Spain getting familiar with the language. And so he was able to be helpful with this. And what happened was that by 2011, we began to have a parish program where the group would go down for a week. I couldn't get to the first one, but I joined the group the next year and have kept it up ever since. And we always go down on a Monday, and the trip takes a full day because you fly to Mexico City and then change, and there's a flight to the nearest airport, which is Tuxtla Gutierrez, about an hour and a half away from San Cristobal de las Casas, where we stay. We support two congregations there. One is in San Cristobal itself, and the other is in Yochib, which is about an hour and a half drive away. And we discovered that the Yochib congregation really wanted to have an opportunity for their children to learn English. And so we have given money to pay for an English teacher to come on Saturdays and have a program. And they've had different teachers over the years, but we will often go up there on a Saturday morning, and the children will show their English skills. And we've also paid for health classes at their request. And when we were there in January, we had, instead of going to Yochib for English lessons, we had a joint program at the church in San Cristobal, and we arranged for all the Yochib congregation to be bused there. And we broke up into small groups and had Bible study, translating from one English, Spanish, and the local Mayan dialect. And this really worked out very well. Children in the congregation did local dances. We had a lunch, and then we often send people, individuals from the congregation will often make gifts of athletic equipment for the children, and some of those had been sent down, and the men and boys in the group went out to the athletic field, and the women and the girls stayed in the church, and we had this talk about food and recipes, and everyone got up and told about a favorite recipe. And I remember saying to the group that I lived alone, and that many people say that, oh, it's not worth it cooking for one person, but I said, I think that I am important in God's eyes, and that therefore it's worth it for me to fix a nice dinner. And one other very nice event that happened when we were down there this year, we usually go to a children's home near Tuxtla Gutierrez, the Hogar. It's orphan children or children who have been in toxic family situations. And the earthquake that hit that part of Mexico in fall of 2017 had damaged some of the buildings at the Hogar, and the girls' dormitory was no longer usable, and they'd had to move the kids to another site on the premises. And this was, the director said, very hard for them because they've been through all this instability, and to be here in a situation where it should be stable and then have to move their dormitory to a different spot had been hard for them. And we had sent some contributions toward that, and when we were there this year, the girls' dormitory had been entirely rebuilt and repainted in these beautiful pastel colors, and the chapel had been damaged, and that had been repaired, and the children came to meet us and gave us bookmarks they had made, and they had written gracias on them, and we were very pleased about. And we're not the only congregation from Chicago that is involved there. The Church of Our Savior has members who make regular trips, and the Church of the Atonement has. I think I may previously have mentioned Larry Green, who became a member at St. Chrysostom's in the fall of 1981. He actually will cite the date of the first Sunday that he came to St. Chrysostom's, and he became the first African American elected to the vestry in the Howell years. And in the Webster years, he realized that he was being called to the permanent diaconate. And I remember him telling me this, and that he was very annoyed by the delays that were going on, but he figured if he was so annoyed by this that it really was the Lord at work, and that he really was truly called to this service. And in early 2005, he was ordained with several other deacons in a service at the cathedral, and he has done really great work in his years as a deacon. He's been very actively involved with youth guidance and in their programs, BAM, Becoming a Man, and WOW, Working on Womanhood. And he's been actively involved in those and is also active in many ways at St. Chrysostom's. And he received an award for his service as a deacon some years ago. I can't remember the exact time, but I think everybody felt, they could not have picked a better person. A change to the church that was not completed while Ray was still with us, but which he put in motion after the organ was moved to the back of the church. The space at the head of the north aisle, which had housed organ pipes, was left completely empty. And Nancy Brooker, who had been the search committee chair when Ray came and had also been our first woman to serve as junior then senior warden, had sadly died in her 50s, and the space vacant from where the pipes had been, the idea was that it could be remodeled into a second chapel, not one with an altar, but one where people could come and be quiet and meditate. And Nancy's husband and family gave money for that chapel, and though the work was not completed in Ray's tenure, the plans were started while he was here. In the fall of 2011, he announced to the congregation that he would be retiring at the end of February. He had reached retirement age and figured he would stay on through the Christmas and Epiphany season, and his last Sunday was the last Sunday in February. Amy Richter came back and preached the sermon on his last Sunday, and Bishop Benito from Southeast Mexico was also present, and they had a special issue of the Good News newsletter to honor him, and there was a dinner in his honor. And just a couple of personal stories about him. I retired in early 2000, and I had given notice the previous fall. And when Ray heard that I was retiring, he said not once but several times, "Now you must certainly invite Eve and me to your retirement party." And I did this, and they came. And not only that, but the Sunday before, there was this bunch of flowers in front of the holy table, and I looked at the bulletin, and they had given them in honor of my retirement, which I thought was very nice. Then 3 years later, just before they introduced more restrictive regulations on U.S. travel to Cuba, I had signed up for a 10-day tour of New Year's in Havana, and it was about 5 days in Havana and 5 days elsewhere in Cuba. And when Ray heard I was going, he said, would you bring me a cigar? He didn't smoke regularly, but every now and again he did enjoy a good cigar. And he said, but only if it is not going to get you into any trouble, because I'd rather go without the cigar than have it be that you try and get it and you're not able to get back. And as it turned out, there was no difficulty, and one time the group was taken to a store in a hotel that did sell cigars, and the tour leader was ready to give advice. And there's one brand that he said that was very well known but that wasn't very good, and I said, well, what do you recommend for someone who doesn't smoke a lot of cigars but who does know a good cigar? And he gave me a brand name, and this cost like maybe $1 more, but I was able to bring the cigar back again, and he was very tickled by this. And another personal note was that he said that one thing chore that he always rather liked to do was to polish silver, because it didn't require a lot of thinking, and he could relax and think about other things while he was doing it. And one year at the brunch auction, one of the auction items was that he would give you a half a day and polish your silver. I don't remember how much that brought in. After he left, our first woman ever to serve as the rector or acting rector came, the Reverend Terry Hyduck. And she was also the first clergy person publicly to be in a single-sex relationship, which does not seem in any way to have bothered the congregation. And Danielle Thompson, who had been our last assistant when Ray was there, stayed on for a few months, but her husband, who had completed his degree at the University of Illinois, was appointed to a teaching position outside the area, and so they moved. And Reverend Kevin Goodman came from the cathedral. I think he served only part-time, and Eon Birch, who had finished seminary at U of C, but had not yet been ordained because they had not found a vacancy for him, came as another assistant, and he was ordained deacon before he came to the parish, and a few months later was ordained priest at St. Chrysostom's, and he too was in a single-sex relationship. Terry was, I think, felt that when she came that her role was kind of to get us in shape a bit, and she didn't like everything that she saw in the parish. And what she particularly didn't like was that we still had morning prayer twice a month, and she had at least one meeting, and I think maybe more. I was not able to attend any of them, if there were more than one, about worship. And she apparently really pushed for changing to the Eucharist every Sunday. And in the 20 years since the parish had been polled before Webster came, the opinion had not changed. People still very much wanted to have morning prayer twice a month, and so she did let that be. One thing that, one way in which she was very good was that she was very supportive of families of deceased parishioners. And I remember going to one funeral that she conducted, and she had these really great things to say about this person. It was the brother of a longtime parishioner, and he hadn't been in fact, I think he'd never gone to church very much, but she said, well, God had his back, and she told about how he really liked the song about to dream the impossible dream. And Ray Webster had left in February 2012, and in October 2013, our present rector, Wes Smedley, arrived. And about a year after he came, the work in the Brooker Chapel was completed, and it was specially dedicated on a Saturday, and then they had special services on the Sunday, and Ray returned for those services, and members and friends of the Brooker family were present. Not too long after Wes arrived, he made it clear that he thought a capital campaign was needed, and plans for that and for the 125th anniversary celebration last year were underway. And for the anniversary, we had several special events. There was a dinner at the History Museum in one of their public spaces, and with a charity auction, and a speaker from the museum came, gave an evening program on the World's Fair, and a group from the parish took a special guided tour of the exhibit that Newberry Library had on it last fall. Wes developed a heart condition that required surgery and was on leave for the last 3 months or so of 2018. The last event that he did before his leave of absence was a big dinner at the Racket Club honoring Mary Ellen Christie on her retirement as head of the day school. And she served over 40 years in that position, which is an all-time record for anybody on the parish staff. And Wes returned in the first part of this year in very good health. He is careful to keep his activity level at not too high a pace, and he's resumed something that he really enjoys doing. When Ian Birch was our assistant, he stayed on a couple of years after Wes came. He led a Bible study group, and Wes would take that when Ian was away and took it over afterward, and he really enjoyed doing this, and he started a Lenten group that met during Lent, and is now the group is continuing, and we're doing about a 6-week study on Romans. And We had just last week a cabaret dinner as part of the capital campaign program, and Richard and several members of the choir performed. There was cabaret type food that you could eat either walking around or sitting at a table, and everybody had a very good time. And they've been getting the very large gifts, and I think we're at the point where we're going to be seeing a lot of activity, and hoping for the lot of smaller donations. And Wes preached a very good sermon on Dare to Dream a week ago Sunday, looking ahead to the future, and I think we can look ahead to a good future. And that is it.